covering Chapter 26, Section 3, Winning the War, the latter stages of World War I, and ultimately how the war will be resolved leading into the conflict with the Russian Revolution. That being said, key terms first. Mr. Welch, go ahead.
A group in England in which the women would work in the fields to grow the nation's food. Women's Land Army. Very
good. The Women's Land Army. Okay, this is one of those things as far as maybe you cannot yourself serve overseas or for that example directly next door, but there's stuff that you can do at home for the war effort. Next term, Ms. Langer.
A British nurse who ran a Red Cross hospital in Belgium. The Germans shot her after hearing she was aiding Allied soldiers. Edith Cavell.
Very good. So you heard of the Red Cross locally? Specifically, there's one in Adrian, Michigan, or Red Cross blood drives. There's your founder. Okay. Next term, Mr. Welch.
Russian treaty with Germany in 1918, which formally ended Russian participation in World War I. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk.
Brest-Litovsk. Very good. Next term, please. Mr. Hayes.
President of the United States during World War I issued the 14th points and helped create the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow Wilson. This is the president that's attributed with the ultimate ending of World War I, specifically the derivative of the American war effort. Next term, Mr. Welch.
Was a list of terms for resolving World War I and future wars by President Wilson. The 14 points.
Very good. And we're going to analyze these a little bit in greater detail in a couple seconds here. Next term, Mr. Newman.
Channeling of a nation's entire resources into war effort. Total war.
Total war, excellent. Total meaning all, everything that the nation can offer as far as how to win this war is put forth. Specifically, economic features. Next term, Ms. Langer.
Spreading of ideas to promote a cause or damage of an opposing cause. Propaganda.
Propaganda, very good. Okay. An easy way to understand this, to propose a different idea. Okay, to try to sway the populace either for the war or against the war is the propaganda we're looking at. Next term, Mr. Newman.
Horrible acts against innocent people. Atrocities.
An atrocity, very good. You've ever described something as atrocious? Mm-hmm. That's what we're looking at here. Okay, the inhumane, killing, murdering, and just think of the weapons that are available during this war compared to other wars. A lot of people thought that all these crimes that were being committed were atrocities. Okay, and then the final term, please. Mr. Hayes.
An agreement to end fighting, armistice.
Armistice, excellent. Okay, to end fighting, or another way you can understand this, your arms are bound behind you, therefore you cannot fire your weapon. It's a ceasefire. Okay, the war is not solved and completely over, but we've agreed to stop fighting for now. Go ahead, question?
Isn't propaganda like something that they would use in a store or something? Like propaganda, like selling items or something?
Can be more descriptive.
Like putting stuff on shelves that's like your propaganda, or like the selling of stuff, kind of. I don't know.
As far as like comic strips and magazines, stuff like that, they would use propaganda to advertise, absolutely. But the actual selling of products, if it was like, say you're trying to go pro-American in this war, you could be propagandizing your markets as in only selling American items and not allowing Germans. Absolutely. Okay? True or false? If it's false, you got to correct it. Number one, while governments did raise taxes to finance the war, other aspects of their economies were left untouched. Go ahead.
It's false. Governments raised and borrowed huge amounts of money to pay the cost of war. They introduced other economic controls like getting prices and forbidding strikes.
Very good. A few different things they're going to do here. Not only are we raising taxes, but we're going to borrow money from other countries. Anyone heard of Chase Bank?
Yeah.
Okay. Chase Bank, there are a few around here, but they typically deal with mortgages. It was ultimately founded by J.P. Morgan. Maybe you guys have heard of him before. J.P. Morgan himself will write millions of dollars in checks to countries during Europe just to help them win the war. Rationed food, what does that mean?
Small amount of food you're giving.
Right. They're going to reduce the amount of food you're given with the idea that if it runs out, we can last longer. Now, you might be hungry initially, but you're still eating. Okay. Fixed prices and banned strikes. Number two, during the war, only democratic governments refrained from censorship. Ms. Kersey.
False. All governments censor the press. Use censorship.
Very good. All of them censored the press, literature, historical writings, and advertisements. Now, why might a government want to do that? Why would you censor what the people are finding out about this war?
To keep them not knowing what's truly happening and the true cause behind it.
Absolutely. To keep the population either engaged and maybe think that, we're having some success in this war, i.e. you won't tell them exact, death tolls of certain battles because you don't want them to be horrified and say, we need to get out of this war ASAP. You want to try to keep your people involved. Sir?
Wouldn't that also stop people from starting propaganda?
Absolutely. If you think that you guys are winning, then there's no sense in propagandizing your government, saying that the government looks silly for being involved in this conflict, because we are experiencing success. Absolutely. Number 3. As men left to fight the war, women took over their jobs and kept national economies going. Ms. Rady?
True.
Absolutely true. Okay, that was a huge role that women filled during this time period, and ultimately in the United States will eventually result with their ability to vote afterwards. Okay? Any questions? Excellent. Number 4. After the war, most women continued to work at the jobs they had taken during the war. Ms. Rudisil?
False. Women were forced to give up their jobs for the men returning home.
Absolutely. Okay, they had to give up their jobs as the men came home from war. Now, is that fair? Not at all. They proved their economic worth. They proved their worth to society. But because they are women during this time period, men come home. Their job is to do what?
Be housewives.
Essentially be housewives, cook, clean, and raise the family. Okay? But we are growing in women's rights, though. You have to understand that. Number 5, the 1917 revolution in Russia led to even greater Russian involvement in the war. Ms. Donahue.
It's false. They signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which ended Russian participation in World War I.
Excellent job. Revolution led to the withdrawal from the war through the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Excellent. Number 6, the United States was persuaded to join the war by unrestricted submarine warfare, cultural ties to the Allies, and the Zimmerman Note. Ms. McGeaney.
True.
It is absolutely true. Those are your major reasons here. Now, again, this unrestricted submarine warfare, basically you have German U-boats in warring waters. They just attack first, ask questions later. There are some steps that will be taken as far as diplomatic procedures, but ultimately it's not going to be solved. Okay, cultural ties to the Allies. This is the same example as far as why the Russians became involved with the Serbs after the assassination. Does that make sense? Because both of those two countries are Slavic nations. Same theory here. We're very strong culturally tied to the English. And then the Zimmerman Note. Anyone know what that was? Or the intent there? What was the Zimmerman Note? Say it.
Which Arthur Zimmerman.
Yep.
It's often I saw it.
Okay, you guys are familiar with the Mexican-American War, right?
Yeah.
Where the United States won and essentially gained California, New Mexico, Arizona, the southwest portion of the nation.
Yeah.
The idea here was if Mexico staged a front of the war in our hemisphere against us, so basically they're aligning with Germany and the Central Powers, once the war is over and Germany has won, Germany will guarantee that Mexico gets all of that land back. Okay? So if you're a Mexican member of the military or a leader of the government, that sounds pretty enticing, right? Germany wins, you guys get hundreds of square miles back for your country. Unfortunately for the Mexicans and the Germans, we intercepted that note. Lucky us. Yes. Number 7. After the German offensive in 1918, the Allies could not gather their forces for another attack. Mr. Schultz.
False. They launched a counterattack, and eventually there was armistice.
Excellent job. Okay, it drove the German forces back and eventually won the war. So we launched a massive counterattack and eventually caused us to win this war. Excellent job, all of you. We'll hold for a couple seconds here, then we'll advance to objectives. Remember, this will be available on YouTube by 7th hour if any of you need to refresh what you've missed. Okay? First objective, explain how World War I became a total war. Mr. Urecki.
Governments began to take a stronger role in directing the economy and cultural lives of their people.
Good. Now, specifically, we're going to analyze what they're actually doing. So, absolutely, they're controlling the economy and directing it towards a war effort. Draft system. Taxes increased. Again, wars cost money. Therefore, you have to raise funds to do that. Okay? Food rationed. We want to ensure that not only our soldiers but our populace are not starving. You may be eating less than normal, but you're still eating. Industry was militarized. Can anyone explain what that means?
Basically, industry where they used to make like hats and stuff. Now they're making military suits, and like people that are making cars, they're making tanks. They're basically making anything needs for military.
Perfect. For example, the big three during this time, Henry Ford, typically making automobiles, stopped that to help with the construction of tanks and other military-based vehicles. And as the student did provide, if you were a clothier making sweatshirts or whatever it is that you're making at the time, maybe you stopped and now you're making military uniforms. Okay, it was a very patriotic thing to do. Propaganda increased. This is an element of propaganda down here. Now, one of the common descriptions, this is going to appear on your quiz, so you might want to write this down. As far as what the Germans are, they are known as the vile Huns. Okay? Now, have any of you ever watched the movie Godzilla?
Yes.
Okay. That's essentially what they're comparing the Germans to. There's an example back there where it says, destroy this monster, enlist. Okay? They wanted to make the enemy look as inhumane as possible to get you all to literally hate them. Okay? And obviously, with your vile Huns, you can see that this monster is holding Lady Freedom here in distress. Life's becoming really difficult. He's attacking another female representing justice, or, oh boy, what just happened? Or America. Excellent. Next objective. It's technology. This happens. Specify the role women played in the war effort. Ms. Schneid.
Okay, women took over the men's jobs in order to keep the economy going. Many women worked as nurses on the front lines during 90-degree weather all day. This helped them eventually to have the right to vote.
Excellent. Okay, a few things here, and you're going to have to try to follow my underlining. Entered the workforce. So as she said, they took over the men's job as they went to serve overseas. Entered the workforce. Joined the branches of military, typically field nurses. Okay? Is what we're looking at as far as involvement. Field nurses. Okay? Because of their effort, they were in the right to vote. Excellent job. 19th and 1919. Excellent. Any questions? A couple more seconds here. This is the depiction of Edith Cavell, who was murdered by the German forces. And you can see, obviously, standing, bodies thrown upon the ground, with just a German officer looking upon her, almost emotionless. Okay? You catch wind of this back home, or certainly if you're in the United Kingdom, the idea there is to strike a nerve. Okay? And that's it.
No.
I'll go over the other objective here in a second. Okay, homework for tonight. And we'll go over the other objective here in a second. Homework for tonight, 26.3 QREV, so next worksheet. The 26.4 PR, and you're just adding that to those line papers, 838. Number 1, as always, you're just defining those words in the 3 for 5. You're doing it as it is directed in the book. Okay, 1 second.